All righty. Well, hello and happy Tuesday on behalf of NEWaukee. We're really excited to have you all for our Predicting 2023 Community Trends event. Just want to let you all know that during this event, if you have any questions, any comments, we encourage you to use the chat. Please let us know what you're thinking, how you're reacting, what your thoughts are, any recommendations, and different predictions you might have. We'd love to expand and continue the conversation, not only here in the chat, but also we invite you to continue the conversation afterwards via LinkedIn. And so we'll share a little bit more about how you can do that, but let's go ahead and get started. So my name is Lauren. I am a community and network manager at NEWaukee. We are based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and we are an agency that works with organizations to help them build their communities and the experiences that fuel them. And so we are really, really excited to bring to you predicting our 2023 community trends. Here's a little bit more about us. We also do experience design and production, engagement consulting, and marketing strategy. And so if there are any ways that we can support you, we invite you to let us know. To kick us off, I want to introduce you to my colleagues, Lena and Saratoga. We are going to be the ones who get to share our trends with you. And so before we jump into our list, we'd like to go ahead and give Lena and Saratoga the opportunity to introduce themselves. So Lena, would you go ahead and share us a little bit about yourself with us?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lena Orwig. I've been working with NEWaukee for a full year and a couple days. So excited to share that I've completed my first year. It's a very exciting place to be. I've been working in events for the last 5 years since I've been in college. So I've done all kinds of things across the board, and I get to do all that same stuff with NEWaukee. So it's always an exciting time, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Saratoga?
Yeah, I am Saratoga Schaefer, or Toga, because that's a mouthful of a name. I have been at NEWaukee for, I guess, a year and a half now. And I do a lot of our digital marketing. So a lot of social media, a lot of blog posts, a lot of writing, all that fun stuff. Been in that sort of space for a while now, 5 or 6 years. So I'm really excited to be here and to chat with you all this morning.
Awesome. So again, welcome on behalf of NEWaukee, myself, Lena, and Toga. So this is 2023. Wow, we made it and we're here. And so we are coining this the year of community. 2023, we're going to see a huge emphasis on communities, community building. And so while this trend has been really on the rise over the last several years through the pandemic, things like that, we're truly going to see it begin to flourish this year. We want to see and know that we're going to see organizations begin to prioritize it. And it's not just a prioritization because, it's a trend, but really because it needs to be something that is not only fully embraced by a business and an organization, but it's also something that's really going to help us continue to thrive. And so again, 2023, the year of the community, we're really, really excited to share what that means to us. So the why behind that is there needs to be a true resilience and persistence. Creating and managing communities and building up our members within them is a really important part of our day and this day and age, truly. And so prioritizing that resilience and that persistence is key as we think about how community members feel supported, as we think about how they're uplifted, and really just ultimately how they're active and loyal. So many of us, as we launched our communities, for those of us who have them already, really used engagement as a true metric around how the health of the community was sustained. And yes, that's great. And that's something that we really want to focus on. But there are a number of other things that we certainly can pour into these communities and to help us be successful and to bring forth that activity and that loyalty. And so we're excited to share some of these trends to help you achieve that. Also, we want you to just take a moment while you're going through this and think about really how can your community be future-proof? And so what we mean by that is how can we create and how can your brand create experiences for people where they have lifestyle and habit changes, again, to really pour into that loyalty and that activity, but also help them feel really ingrained and connected and build that trust. And so be thinking about that as you listen to these trends, as you just generally grow your community this year, and then as you're thinking about a number of different strategies that you start to implement. And so we're really excited to get started. We're going to go through our 8 top trends in community this year, and then we're going to give you some insights into how you can specifically utilize them. So really how you put these into action, not just a list where, you know, you read them and you're like, okay, now what? We want to really help you along the way. And so not only ask us questions again in the chat here today, but also we're here to continue the conversation moving forward. And so as we start this trend list, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Saratoga to kick us off.
Yeah, so our first trend is attention is in decline. So the average human attention span is 8 seconds. And with the rise of apps like TikTok, and you see it on Instagram Reels, all those other kind of social media sites, attention span is at an all-time low. So in 2023, we're going to likely see that community managers need to figure out ways to quickly and succinctly engage their people. So it's not enough just to make good content. That's great. You want that. But it also has to be digestible and cyclical. So this webinar is actually an example of that because we're trying to keep it shorter and not an hour and a half long, which we could easily do. So with this in mind, Lena or Lauren, do you have any sort of recommendations for people on what they can do with this trend?
Something that comes to mind for me, especially with like a shorter attention span, is just that it's a challenge and it might feel like a losing game at times, but I also think it's a great opportunity to practice mindfulness within your organization and like continuously reassess and finesse and fine tune your vision and your mission and your values. And I think when you're building community, that's especially important. So if the content that you have to put out has to be shorter and snappier, I think the challenge in that is presenting an opportunity to be mindful and making sure that you have an accurate pulse on the community that you're building instead of just like always churning out maybe something familiar and easy and efficient. So I kind of see it as like a silver lining.
I totally agree. And ultimately, rule of thumb, think about yourself, right? Like what is going to keep you engaged? What is going to keep you attentive to the work that is being done, to the awesome content that's being shared? And so be thinking about that as you output, truly.
Mm-hmm. So our second trend is that we are really going to start focusing on in-person experiences over virtual and hybrid experiences. You know, with the pandemic, we kind of had to shuffle into that format overnight, and that was a fun and exciting challenge for a while, but definitely in 2023, a focus on in-person is a lot more important, especially because people are craving that one-on-one connection honestly more than ever. And in terms of building community, I think the more approachable and relaxed and flexible and fun that we can make our events, the more people are going to be willing to come out in person and connect one-on-one.
Yeah, I think one of the keywords you just said there is flexible. I think flexibility is going to be the name of the game in these in-person experiences. People want something that they can sort of like float in and out of and not feel like there's a super structured time period, so that they can come as their schedule allows and not feel like they're missing out on anything.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah, so this is a big one, an emphasis on nostalgia. So there's a lot of bad stuff happening in the world right now. And as a result, escapism marketing is huge. So people want to be transported back into a time of nostalgia and comfort. So it's sort of about thinking, what's something your brand or company or organization used to do that maybe has some happy feelings attached to it? And how can you bring that sense of nostalgia and escapism back to your community in a way that's still beneficial and productive?
Yeah, I think about this a lot when we're planning events for smaller communities that we have as clients, because sometimes you're connecting people who have very different backgrounds. And a lot of times we see like a big age gap. And I think that nostalgia factor is so important because it really kind of speaks to the heart of who somebody is and speaks to like their unique expression and lived experience. And some of those more like segmented demographic features kind of fall away, and it really helps people connect like in a very authentic way that lasts outside of like the event that you might be planning or like the community experience. So nostalgia is something that I always prioritize because I just feel like it just speaks to like your core.
It's about the culture, like continue to tap into that, live into that. We all have those moments. I feel like every day I'm watching TV shows, seeing what's popping up on Netflix and everything, and I'm feeling just all of that nostalgia coming back. And so if there's any way that you can be a part of that game, help to create that comfort that Toga talked about, you're going to really be a headliner, and people are going to be attracted to what you're putting out there.
Yeah, and this actually kind of leads into our next point, which is that we're seeing an increased focus as well on value-led versus demographic-led segmentation, not only in the events that we plan, but in the communities that we're building, because people are more inclined to gather now when they can relate over a shared interest, especially a niche interest versus something that's more broad. So if you imagine in your own life, if you would be more willing to go to an event in your city that is focused on like your interest in baking or your interest in volunteering with animals versus just a meetup for people who live in your city, it might be beneficial to go to a broader meeting of people who live in your city. But I think the importance on value led and something that is like very niche and tailored kind of build your relationship with the other people before you even get there, because you're walking into a room where you already have something in common with the people who are there, and it helps those connections happen more naturally, and I think it strengthens them over time. So that's definitely something that we're prioritizing as a trend this year, and I'm excited to see where that one goes.
Another thing we're really excited about seeing related to this is that there are so many more community managers like ourselves and like you going out there and wanting to make connections with people, and folks just really need something to break the ice. And so again, a lot of these value-led opportunities allow us to have something to talk about that really allows us to find that connection so that we can move into even greater achievements together and making those stronger bonds.
Yeah, and I would say as a recommendation for people who are looking to utilize this specific trend, you should definitely take stock of how you're segmenting your community now. So do a little internal audit, do figure out what the values are of the members in your community. It's good to know those demographics too. You should definitely know that information, but try to be creative in how you group people and just really take a deep look at what's going on internally and externally and how you're leading these communities right now. So number 5, communities are the new influencers. In 2023, we're predicting that we're going to see communities starting to actually edge out influencers in terms of being a trustworthy opinion that consumers will take into account for brands and organizations. There's starting to be a bit of a lack of authenticity with influencers, especially with like spawn posts and all that kind of stuff. People, influencers aren't going away. They are here, they're here to stay, and they can be incredibly useful for some brands, but people are now hyper aware of being sold to. And on the flip side, communities act a little bit more like old school word of mouth references. So there's more trust there, and you can turn your community into sort of a champion tastemaker that will be able to reference or influence certain experiences or products.
And as you look, sorry, go ahead, Lena.
I was going to say, the thing that comes to mind immediately when I think about this is not only the trust that you're building, because that's super important, but the fact that if your whole community is bought in, whether that's 40 people or 4 people, their openness and willingness to try something new is also raised. And I think that's a really important factor. Like, they're not going to just be kind of unmoved by the same flashy Instagram sponsored ad that they've been seeing. Like, they see their friends their community members, taking an interest in it, and they'll be more willing to try. Whereas if it was before something that they would just look over, and I think that's so important when it comes to building trust amongst people in the group.
And a recommendation here is to take that data that you all captured when we talked about number 4, right? And allow that to help you identify some of your power users, some of your super loyal fans, allow them to help you lead, but then also put them out in the forefront as an opportunity to say, can you share a little bit more about this? Or even utilizing different reviews to be able to highlight. So really utilizing the existing, group to be able to share that influence and offer that information to folks.
And also remember that you don't need to appeal to everyone. This is sort of a rule that influencers themselves use, and is why micro influencers are actually pretty successful now, because they have their niche. You do not need to have broad appeal. You just need to find those right people and activate them.
Totally. So for number 6, we're looking at authenticity, AI, and open communities. And so we've talked about authenticity a lot. The big and buzzword right now is AI, as everyone has been talking about it. And then also just generally, like, what does it mean to be an open community? And so people are really looking and focusing on brands and communities that they deem trustworthy, as Lena had referenced before. And so most of those really want to have an opportunity to make that connection that is truly genuine. And so does AI complement that? Does it not? That's like the big question. And so with the rise of AI, I think there are a lot of things that are fast and exciting about the capabilities that it has, but it also really makes us think like we need to have a real connection. We really need to find ways for humans to really be the ones that are putting this content out there. And so our focus and our recommendation of an open community really embraces that commitment to change, while still also creating some spaces for humans to connect. And so we really want to see all of us sort of find ways to utilize AI to our advantage. So been seeing a lot of people use different platforms to be able to help us sort of generate initial thought, kind of make us work smarter, but then also bring it forward and be able to add some of our own voice. And so we want to recommend that you all think about how you not only watch all of these things and how they play in together, but then also how you can leverage them to make your job a lot easier and to help make your community more successful. Lena or Toga, any additional thoughts from you all on AI? And feel free, y'all, in the chat, let us know what you're thinking about AI and how that really works with authenticity.
Yeah,
I think that complementing is the key word there. Like, you hit the nail right on the head, honestly.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same. It's sort of like, if you're thinking about using AI, or if you're already using it, it's important to sort of like take stock of it. Like, how are you using it? How are you utilizing it? And then if you are using it, how are you creating additional pathways that allow for human interaction and connection within the community? So you want AI to be helpful, but you don't want it to sort of take over completely.
Exactly. And so another recommendation related to that is, again, looking at and doing an audit of your different platforms and seeing exactly how they've evolved, and then also how you can be more active in utilizing them. And then again, going back to things like number 5 and number 4 to be able to help you bring in, again, that human connection and leverage. So number 7 is wider buy-in for community efforts across departments. And like, this is a big one, especially if community management is in your title. So we are really seeing that there will be a wider buy-in, interest, and rise across different interdepartmental groups to focus on community building. So it's no longer just an HR initiative, which many of us saw initially as we had our titles evolved over time, but then also we're seeing it as true components of health of a community and of a company. And so what we want to encourage you all to do is really engage across several departments, engage your peers, whether they can be active participants in your community or not, and really helping to think through how does this community continue to develop. And so a lot of times people start initially with just marketing and sales. And so we're encouraging you to go even above and beyond that. Look at all of the functions of your community, what the different work streams are, and how you can pull people in to be able to engage and again, make and reach many of your goals. Toga or Lena, any thoughts there from you all on other recommendations that people can utilize to get wider buy-in?
I would say figure out if there's any disconnect between your departments, like in regards to your community. Does everyone at the company know that the community exists? Do they know what you're doing with it? Do they know what the goals are with it? So interdepartmental silo stuff can be, there can be a lost in translation issue there. So definitely make sure everybody's on board, maybe create some kind of internal one sheet or fact list or something like that that you can distribute so that people are just aware that this exists and what you're using it to do.
Mhm.
Yeah, some of the successful communities that we've seen that practice this already are folks who offer up updates about their community and maybe a newsletter, especially internally, to be able to highlight what's happening and how they can be engaged and how you all can support their ultimate goals. So awesome. And then number 8, growing focus on ROI, return on investment. So as companies continue to invest more in community, and then just generally how they really are keying into the looming recession, we see that there's a lot of pressure to be able to showcase ROI, especially when it comes to community work. And so we want to just flip that question on you to be answering, how can your community best show value, right? And then thinking about the different metrics that come from that. Really that can be difficult, especially when you're first starting out. I mentioned when we started, a lot of people initially just think about, the engagement goals, the follows, the number of members, things like that. But it can go so much further beyond that. And so think about what else is worth exploring for that ROI and for those metrics so that they line up with your business goals. And then also so that other departments can be well invested in your success and the success of your community as well.
This really makes me think about in the communities that we've built for more like social organizations, how kind of a surprise return on investment was like the referrals. So all the work that we did and that we did to curate the people in the group and then the experiences for them, those natural connections happen. And we exceeded all of our benchmarks, honestly. But then the surprise was how many referrals came because we uplifted that core group of people who kind of became ambassadors. So this kind of just makes me think back to what I said earlier of like just being mindful and kind of always reassessing your goals and what kind of returns you want, because there might be some surprise ones that don't take as much groundwork to get to as you think. And I think that what makes that happen is having like the right support and brain power and creative space behind the community that you're building. So just something to think about. I think there's always those surprise ones in there as well.
Absolutely. And you don't need a lot of metrics, right? Like you can start with measurable small goals and then being able to add on or explore as it goes forward. Ultimately you want to be successful and you want to be able to tell the story, right? And so that is the ultimate goal as it relates to growing focus on ROI. So those are 8 initial trends, but Lena, tell us about other things that we're watching this year.
So we're also going to be keeping our eyes on change and diversification of social platforms. There are a lot that are being created and it's happening very rapidly, where instead of being able to access every community you could think of on one app like Instagram, there are apps that are specifically tailored for just one function, just one feature, and they're doing the work of creating those micro niche communities. So we're very interested to see what's going to happen in that space this year, and also how we can use them for the work that we do, because I think they're going to be very powerful tools. We're also going to be watching social platforms as search engines. So this one kind of relates back, I think, more to Gen Z. I could speak from the Gen Z perspective because I do this. But a lot of people are starting to use social platforms to search their questions because they want something snappy, they want something quick and interactive, and they don't want to just be presented with a list of things to read through. They want their question answered as soon as they search it. So I think when you're thinking about your content strategy, that's something to keep in mind as well. And then lastly, a return to micro communities in social media. Highly curated and niche groups, like we've been saying, are returning. And whether they focus on these apps that I've been talking about that have just one feature, or like on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, these larger platforms, you're going to start to see that people are finding their people and they're gravitating towards those spaces where they can connect with them more intentionally versus just kind of shouting into the void. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the year progresses. I'm personally very excited to see how we can use all of these.
Yeah, and for this, we recommend that you be really vigilant because the world of social media changes very rapidly and sometimes very unpredictably. So staying on top of trends and news, either by finding a newsletter that you like or a social account to follow, can be really helpful. It can be really easy to sort of like neglect your online presence, especially with everything else going on. But running a social media page can be a full-time job and it's not always easy to prioritize it, but the more active and tuned in you are to those pages and the people who are coming to those pages, the easier it's going to be to activate your online communities.
Absolutely. I'm really excited that we've had so much energy and insights in the chat as well. And so we'd love to just also expand on maybe one or two other questions that I see that showed up. And so one of the questions that came in from Liz, so thank you for sharing that, Liz, was about AI. And so Liz wanted to know a little bit more about for orgs and social services who may be connecting with consumers at a very stressful and negative point in their life. What would you recommend for finding nostalgic ways to connect them? And then also as it relates to AI, feel free to add like how that can be helpful when it comes to creating content. So Lena or Toga, any thoughts there?
Yeah, so I can reiterate a little bit about what was put in the chat. So Wyatt had a really helpful response saying that it's, sort of all about getting to know the individuals and the people who you're tailoring the nostalgic experience to. So what are their interests and what do they value? What's something that's going to sort of bring back that comforting feeling to them? Because that's going to build trust in a really authentic way. In a larger scale, we're seeing nostalgia incorporated in aspects like food, activities, music, giveaways, that kind of thing. But, you also have to think about for these social services communities, there is a finer line here that you have to walk. There's that balance because you don't want to create sort of like this toxic positivity thing of like, forget all your problems, go back into the past, don't think about anything, but you still want to create that sense of comfort. So doing that research and maybe seeing what other people in your industry are doing can be super helpful, but it can be very small. It can be something like a meme or just a phrase or a reference to a TV show they love. So it doesn't have to be super huge. It's just creating that sense of comfort and, giving them something that they value and letting them know that you're there for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think something that is like interesting to tie on when we're planning local events is like also nostalgia for like local history. I feel like that can get overlooked too because we're talking in like broad sense, but like even fun cultural moments from Milwaukee's past, if you're working with a group in Milwaukee, like depending on the age range, that could also really resonate and be fun too.
And NEWaukee does that really awesome. But no matter where you're at, I know we've got a number of people from all over. We just want to thank you for joining us and for watching these trends with us. We want you again to share with us what you're watching, what you're thinking about, how you connect to these trends. So we're going to continue this conversation on LinkedIn. Like we said, we'll be posting a little bit more about this. So our presentation will be shared more in the version of this recording, but we look forward to having you all take a look at it, reference it again. We will be giving you an update, so stay tuned for that. And then feel free to just let us know what other questions that you have. But thank you so much for joining us today. And if you have other questions, looks like a few others came in the chat. We'll plan to reach out to you specifically and give you a quick response to share a little bit more. So thank you for those, and thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your day and your week.